They didn't even wait for the lawyer to sit down. She'll get nothing. Dad hated her. That was the first sentence hurled at me like a stone the moment I stepped into the room. It came from my sister, Samantha, sharp and confident, with all the cruelty of someone who had waited a long time to say it. No greeting, no hesitation, just a declaration designed to hurt, and it did. The words slammed into my chest, knocking the breath from me. I felt my hand instinctively tighten around Noah's. He looked up, sensing everything without me saying a word. He always did. The room smelled the same as I remembered. Polished wood, stale cigar smoke, and something sickly sweet. Probably Samantha's perfume, clinging to every surface like her presence always had. I hadn't been in this house for almost a decade. Not since I packed a suitcase, lifted Noah into the back seat of a borrowed car, and drove away with more questions than answers. And now, here I was, walking straight back into the pit that had nearly swallowed me whole the first time. We hadn't even sat down, but the message was already painfully clear. I wasn't family anymore. I wasn't a sister or a daughter or a niece. I was a loose end, something messy and uncomfortable they were eager to tie off and forget. Samantha sat at the head of the long mahogany table, her gray pantsuit pressed to perfection, her chin high, hair pulled into a bun so tight it looked like it hurt. Her lipstick was a hard red slash across her face, war paint. She always wore red when she wanted to look untouchable. And today, she looked like a statue carved from judgment. Then came the voice I had dreaded even more. Uncle Martin let out a low, humorless chuckle and leaned back in his chair, fingers laced behind his head. "Even her kid knows she's worthless," he said, gesturing toward Noah with a nod. Like my son was just a thing, not a person. Noah's gaze dropped to the carpet. I felt a sharp pain in my chest and forced myself to breathe. The others, cousins, neighbors, old friends of the family, shifted uncomfortably, but no one defended me. Not a single voice stood up against the quiet cruelty. I was surrounded by people who had picked sides long ago, and mine wasn't the winning one. I led Noah to the last seat at the far end of the table, as far from Samantha as possible. The chair creaked loudly when I sat. Noah climbed onto the seat beside me, folding his small hands in his lap like he was trying to disappear. I could see the flicker of nerves in his eyes, but he didn't say a word. Samantha turned toward me slowly. Her smile was razor-thin and poisonous. "You know this is pointless, right?" she said, her voice smooth as glass. "Dad rewrote the will. You're out. Completely. Said you were dead to him." She said it like she was reciting a line from a play she'd rehearsed 100 times. I didn't reply. I couldn't. My tongue felt too heavy, my throat too dry. I nodded slightly, pretending I understood. But inside I was breaking. I had come with the smallest, most desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, he'd left me something. A letter. A note. A sentence to show he had thought of me in the end. But it was looking more and more like I had made a mistake. The room was filled with an oppressive silence, broken only by the occasional cough or the rustling of papers. My chest tightened with every passing second. It was like sitting in a courtroom where the verdict had already been decided. I glanced at Noah. He looked calm, composed even, but I could see the way his little hands clenched in his lap. He was absorbing it all. I wanted to pull him out of there, shield him from the venom that dripped from every corner of that room. But before I could even think about leaving, the door creaked open. Mr. Bennett walked in with a folder tucked beneath his arm. He looked exactly the same as the last time I saw him. Neat gray suit, wire-rimmed glasses, and an expression that could keep secrets forever. He gave a short nod and took his place at the head of the table. The room straightened itself like a class full of schoolchildren. Samantha's posture grew even stiffer. Uncle Martin folded his arms across his chest. Everyone waited. This was it. The reading of the will. And I already knew what it would say. I came expecting nothing. I would leave with even less. But none of them, not Samantha, not Martin, not even I, knew what Noah had brought with him. And with one sentence, my son would change everything. Mr. Bennett cleared his throat. The subtle sound cut through the tension like a knife. He opened the thick folder and adjusted his glasses. The air in the room turned still, as if everyone was collectively holding their breath. My heartbeat thudded behind my ears. Noah sat beside me, small and still, his feet not touching the floor, his hands resting gently on his thighs. "I'll begin with the standard declarations," Mr. Bennet said in his calm, measured tone. "As executor of the estate of Robert Gaines, I have been instructed to carry out his final wishes as outlined in this document, dated 6 weeks prior to his passing." Samantha sat straighter, lips pursed in satisfaction. Uncle Martin tapped his fingers against the wood grain, his gaze fixed ahead like he already knew what was coming. Maybe he did. Maybe they all did. Everyone but me. The first few lines were dry legal language, definitions, property rights, names of assets. I tried to listen, but my mind was already swimming in static. I could feel the humiliation coming like a tidal wave I couldn't outrun. I had lived it before, in whispers and slammed doors, in cold shoulders and unanswered calls. But today they were going to say it out loud in front of everyone. That I wasn't part of the family anymore. "To my daughter Samantha," Mr. Bennet read, "I leave the primary residence and all its contents." Samantha didn't react, but I could feel her satisfaction radiate across the table. Her husband Daniel gave her a smug nod, already envisioning paint swatches and furniture catalogs. The house was theirs now. The house I grew up in. The house that once had a bedroom with my name on the door. A room now stripped of any memory of me. "To my brother Martin, I leave the lake property and remaining shares in the Gaines family business." Uncle Martin's grin widened. He stretched his arms with the lazy contentment of a man who had just won a bet. He looked down the table at me briefly, then turned away with a smirk. Not a word was spoken, but the message was clear. This was what loyalty earned. "To my nephew Eric," Mr. Bennet continued, "I leave the vintage car collection, including the '67 Mustang." That one stung. Eric, the same cousin who once locked me outside in the rain for fun, was now getting Dad's prized collection. I had memories in those cars, Saturday drives, hand-washed weekends, even the occasional scolding for scratching the paint. But none of that mattered now. That chapter had been rewritten without me in it. Mr. Bennet turned the page. His voice didn't falter. He was a professional. He had done this 100 times. But this time, the line he read carved through me like glass. "And as previously declared, my daughter Rachel will not receive a portion of this estate." There it was. Clean. Final. Like a judge's gavel slamming down. A sentence designed to erase me from his legacy entirely. I felt something buckle inside my chest. My lungs forgot how to breathe. My hands, clenched in my lap, had gone cold. Beside me, Noah reached for my fingers and held them without a word. His small grip was warm and grounding. I swallowed hard, blinked against the sting in my eyes. I would not cry. Not here. Not in front of them. Samantha let out a satisfied exhale, not loud, but deliberate. Daniel leaned back, arms folded. Uncle Martin gave a slow shake of his head, like I was a sad case in a courtroom drama he'd seen too many times before. "It's always the ones who walk away that expect something," Martin muttered. The others didn't speak, but their silence was its own kind of cruelty. It filled the room, heavy and full of judgment. I stared down at the polished wood table, tracing the swirls in the grain with my eyes. It was easier than looking at any of their faces. I shouldn't have come. I should have trusted my instincts. But I had let hope speak louder than reason. I had let the ghost of a daughter still craving her father's approval lead me back to this room, to these people, to this pain. And just as I was ready to gather my things, to stand and leave before anyone could see the cracks, Noah moved. He let go of my hand, sat up straighter, and said the words that stopped time. "You forgot the video he recorded." His voice wasn't loud, but it didn't have to be. It cut through the room like a sudden gust of wind through a stale hallway. Every face turned toward him. Samantha blinked. Uncle Martin leaned forward. Even Mr. Bennet paused, pen hovering above the page. I turned to Noah, my heart slamming in my chest. "What video?" I whispered. But Noah wasn't looking at me. He was looking at the lawyer. Calm. Steady. Like he had been waiting for this moment the entire time. From his backpack he pulled a small white envelope. It was slightly wrinkled, sealed tightly. He placed it on the table and pushed it toward Mr. Bennet. My name was written on the front. But beneath it, in my father's unmistakable handwriting, were 6 words that made my blood turn cold. "For the lawyer. Only if it gets ugly." The room fell completely silent. No shuffling. No sighs. Just the thick, loaded quiet of disbelief. My breath caught in my throat. "Noah," I whispered again. "Where did you get that?" He looked up at me with those soft, clear eyes. "Grandpa gave it to me," he said gently. "He told me to keep it safe." And just like that, the ground shifted beneath us. Mr. Bennet stared at the envelope for a moment, his expression unreadable. Then he reached for it slowly, as though it might disappear if he moved too fast. His fingers brushed across the handwriting. He tilted the envelope in his hand, inspecting it like it was something sacred or dangerous. Samantha narrowed her eyes. "What is this supposed to be?" she asked, her voice tight, controlled. "He never said anything about a video." Uncle Martin leaned forward, his elbows resting on the table now. "Anyone can write that. What proof do we have it's even real?" Mr. Bennet didn't answer them immediately. Instead, he slid a letter opener from the folder in front of him and carefully sliced through the seal. Inside was a small black USB drive and a folded sheet of paper. He read the page in silence, his brow furrowing ever so slightly. Then, for the first time since entering the room, the mask of professionalism on his face cracked, just a little. He looked up, voice calm but quieter now. "This note is in Robert's handwriting, and it contains instructions for this video to be viewed only if the situation at the will reading turned hostile or contentious." He glanced at Samantha, then Martin. "I believe this qualifies." Samantha scoffed. "This is ridiculous. We don't even know what's on that thing." Mr. Bennet ignored her and plugged the USB drive into the sleek black laptop on the desk beside him. The screen flickered to life, a dark frame appearing with a single word in the center. "Play." No one moved. No one breathed. The only sound was the low hum of the laptop. I felt like I was holding my entire body still, as if even the tiniest movement would shatter the fragile tension that had settled over us. Mr. Bennet hit the spacebar. The screen went black for a moment. And then there he was. My father. Robert Gaines. Older, thinner, sitting behind the desk I remembered from childhood. He was wearing the navy blue sweater I had given him years ago for his birthday. The one I never knew if he actually wore. His hands were folded in front of him. His shoulders slightly stooped. His face was tired but calm. I didn't breathe. Not when the screen lit up. Not when I heard his voice for the first time in 8 years. "Hi, Rachel." The word struck me like a wave. I wasn't ready. I wasn't prepared to hear my name spoken like that. With no anger, no edge. Just acknowledgement. Recognition. He looked into the camera with a softness I didn't remember. For a long second, he said nothing more, just sat there with the weight of his own words hanging in the silence. "If you're watching this," he finally continued, "then I'm gone. And I'm guessing things didn't go well at the reading." Around me, chairs creaked as people shifted, suddenly uncomfortable. Even Samantha was silent now. "I didn't expect peace between you and the rest of the family," he said. "I know what they think of you. Hell, I know what I said about you. And I was wrong." I felt my heart skip a beat. "I believed what Samantha told me," he said. "I believed Martin. I thought you left because you didn't care. That you abandoned your family. But I didn't ask questions. I didn't listen. You tried. And I shut the door in your face. On you and Noah." Tears welled in my eyes. I didn't look at anyone. I couldn't. Robert swallowed hard. I could see the movement in his throat, the subtle tremble in his fingers. I thought being strong meant being proud. That if you walked away, it was betrayal. But strength, real strength, is doing what you did. Protecting your child. Walking away from something that's breaking you. You did what I couldn't. The room had gone completely still. Even the ticking of the antique clock on the wall seemed to fade into silence. "I met Noah once," he said. "Just him and me. He didn't say much. But when I asked him about you, he said, 'My mom is the safest place in the world.'" My hand flew to my mouth. A sob escaped before I could stop it. "I lost you, Rachel," he said. "I see that now. I lost my daughter because I couldn't stop being right long enough to love her the way she needed. But I won't let my last act be pushing you away again." He paused, drawing a breath that shook at the edges. "So I changed the will." A gasp echoed through the room. Samantha sat upright, her hands gripping the edge of the table. Martin's mouth twitched, but no sound came. I've left the house to you and Noah, he continued. The savings, the retirement fund, they're yours. And a college trust for Noah. I know it doesn't fix everything. But I want you to have peace. I want you to have what I couldn't give when I was alive. He leaned slightly forward, and his eyes, so familiar, so distant, and yet so close, locked onto the lens. If they're angry, let them be angry. You earned this. You lived through all of it. And you never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever managed. The lump in my throat was too big to swallow now. My face was wet with tears I hadn't noticed falling. Noah reached for my hand again, and this time I clung to him. I'm proud of you, Robert said. And I love you, Rachel. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it. The screen began to dim. But just before the video cut to black, he added one last thing. Take care of my grandson. Tell him thank you. And then he was gone. No music. No transition. Just silence. A holy kind of silence. The kind that fills a space when truth finally speaks. His brow furrowing ever so slightly. Then he looked up, and for the first time since entering the room, the mask of professionalism cracked. Not much, but enough to feel it. He glanced around the room, his voice lower now, almost reverent. This note is in Robert's handwriting, he said carefully. It instructs that the enclosed video be played only if tensions arise during the reading. Given the circumstances, I believe we've crossed that threshold. Samantha crossed her arms and scoffed. This is absurd. We don't even know what's on it. Uncle Martin added. What if it's doctored? We have no idea when it was made or even if it's real. Mr. Bennett raised a hand. Not to argue, just to continue. The signature has been verified. The timestamp has been authenticated. Legally, I am bound to follow Robert's final instructions. He turned to the laptop sitting beside him. Its screen dark but waiting. One by one, every head in the room swiveled to look. I felt my chest tightening with each passing second. This wasn't supposed to happen. I had come expecting pain, maybe closure, but not this. Not a voice from beyond the grave. Noah sat still beside me, watching the screen with quiet intensity. He didn't look nervous. He looked certain, like he already knew what we were about to see. The screen blinked to life with a single word in white. Play. No one spoke. Mr. Bennett pressed the spacebar. The screen went black, and then, there he was. My father. Robert Gaines. He looked thinner, older than I remembered, but still unmistakably him. He was sitting behind the desk in his study, the one lined with shelves of books and dusty leather chairs. He wore the navy sweater I once gave him. The one I thought he never wore. And behind him, the old globe that used to fascinate me as a child, still spinning ever so slightly from some unseen breeze. His hands were folded. His mouth moved, but for a moment, there was no sound. Then the audio kicked in, and his voice filled the room. Hi, Rachel. I felt my lungs stop working. His voice wasn't angry. It wasn't cold. It was steady, maybe even gentle. He paused, searching for the words, and then continued. If you're watching this, then I'm gone. And I'm guessing this reading didn't go very well. There were a few awkward movements across the room, a cough, a shifting of weight. But no one dared interrupt. I didn't expect harmony, he said. I know the divisions in this family. And I know how much of that is my fault. He leaned forward slightly. The camera picked up every flicker in his eyes, every twitch of his fingers. The human pieces of a man I had spent so long resenting. I believed what Samantha told me. I believed Martin. I thought you walked out because you didn't care. I thought you gave up. But I never asked. I didn't listen. You tried. And I shut the door in your face. On you and Noah. There was a pause. His throat moved with a hard swallow. I thought strength was about pride. About holding the line. But that's not strength. Strength is walking away from something that's destroying you and protecting your child instead. You were strong. You did what I couldn't do. Tears streamed silently down my cheeks. I didn't look away. I couldn't. His voice was everything I'd wanted to hear for years, and everything I had given up on ever hearing. I met Noah once, he said. Just him and me. You were working. He didn't say much, But when I asked him about you, he said, "My mom is the safest place in the world." The weight of those words crushed something inside me, but not in a painful way. It was the collapse of something old, something bitter and heavy, making room for something else. "I lost you, Rachel," he said. "I see that now. I lost my daughter because I refused to admit I might be wrong. But I'm not going to let that be the last thing I do." He drew a breath. "So I changed the will." A murmur went through the room. Someone shifted quickly in their seat. Samantha stiffened, eyes narrowing. Martin's jaw flexed. "I've left the house to you and Noah," Robert said. "The savings, the retirement fund, it's all yours. And I set up a college trust for Noah. I know it's not enough to make up for the time I wasted. But maybe it's enough to let you breathe easier. To live in peace." He leaned closer to the camera now. His eyes, weary but clear, seemed to stare directly into mine. "If they're angry, let them be angry. You survived. You never stopped being a mother. That's more than I ever managed. You earned this." I felt Noah's small hand slide into mine. I gripped it tightly. "I'm proud of you," Robert said. "And I love you, Rachel. I always did. I just didn't know how to show it." He paused again, blinking slowly. "And please take care of my grandson. Tell him thank you." The screen faded to black. Silence returned, but this time it wasn't heavy with judgment or grief. It was still. It was sacred. It was the silence of truth finally being spoken aloud. No one spoke. The room sat in suspended stillness, every face frozen in some shade of disbelief. Mr. Bennett's hand hovered above the laptop trackpad like pressing a button, had somehow pressed pause on time itself. Even the walls, so heavy with judgment minutes ago, now felt like they were holding their breath. I could feel my own hand trembling in Noah's. Tears clung to my lashes, and I let them fall without apology. I wasn't ashamed. Not anymore. Across the table, Samantha looked like she had been carved from stone. Her face was pale, her mouth set in a tight line that trembled ever so slightly at the corners. Her eyes didn't meet mine. They didn't meet anyone's. Her hand gripped her wine-colored handbag with white-knuckled tension, as if it were the only thing tethering her to the moment. Daniel, her husband, leaned toward her and whispered something I couldn't hear. She didn't respond. She didn't even blink. Uncle Martin sat back in his chair, arms crossed, jaw clenched, staring straight ahead. He didn't say a word, but the muscles in his face twitched. His pride was buckling under something stronger than anger, truth. And the others, the cousins, the family friends, the people who had smiled politely at Samantha's jokes and Martin's digs, who had offered me nothing but silence for a decade, they weren't sneering now. A few looked uncomfortable. One woman, I vaguely remembered her as a neighbor from years ago, dabbed at her eye with a tissue. Some couldn't look at me at all. For once, there were no smug glances. No whispered commentary. No shallow condolences laced with condescension. There was just stillness. The kind of stillness that follows a shift so undeniable, it doesn't need to be explained. Mr. Bennett finally spoke, his voice softer than before, almost reverent. "Robert's revised will is valid and fully enforceable. All necessary documentation is present. The distribution is immediate upon final signatures." Samantha stood up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. The sound startled everyone, even herself. She grabbed her bag and turned to leave, but before she could storm off, she looked at Mr. Bennett and hissed. This was manipulation. He was dying. He wasn't thinking clearly. Mr. Bennett didn't flinch. The documents were signed in my presence. He was of sound mind. She didn't respond. Her heels clicked sharply against the hardwood as she walked toward the door, Daniel trailing behind her, red-faced and muttering under his breath. The door swung shut behind them with a finality that made my heart race. Martin was slower. He didn't move right away. He sat in silence for a long moment, then pushed his chair back with a quiet grunt and stood. He looked at me, or through me maybe, and his lips parted like he wanted to speak. But he didn't. He walked out in silence. One by one the others left. Some gave me nods, maybe of pity, maybe of respect. I wasn't sure. It didn't matter. Soon it was just me, Noah, and Mr. Bennett in the quietest room I had ever known. Mr. Bennett closed the folder gently. "There will be paperwork," he said, his voice returning to its usual register. But everything is in place. I'll have my office contact you this week. I nodded, still unable to form words. He offered a small, sincere smile, then walked out and closed the door behind him. And then it was just us. Me and my son. The silence now was different. It wasn't the silence of rejection, or exile, or shame. It was peace. It was the quiet that comes when something heavy has been laid down after being carried for too long. Noah was still holding my hand. He looked up at me with that soft, knowing smile he had always had. The one that saw through people, through storms, through sorrow. The one that told me he had never doubted. I just wanted you to hear him, he said softly. I pulled him into a hug, pressing my cheek to his hair, breathing him in. The room no longer felt like a courtroom. It felt like ours. We sat there for a long time. Maybe 5 minutes. Maybe an hour. I didn't care. I was finally sitting in the one place I had feared for so long. And I wasn't afraid anymore. For years, I had carried the weight of being forgotten, misjudged, erased. But now I had been seen, heard, remembered. And Robert's voice still echoed in my chest. I'm proud of you. I love you. You earned this. And for the first time in years, I believed it. The house emptied slowly. Footsteps had faded. Doors had closed. The voices that once filled every room were gone, like shadows retreating with the dying light of day. Outside, the late afternoon sun angled through the windows in slanted golden lines that stretched across the old wood floors, painting the silence with a softness I hadn't expected. Noah and I were still sitting at the table. I wasn't sure why I hadn't moved yet. Maybe part of me needed to feel the echo of that moment a little longer, to let it soak in before the real world resumed. The weight of what had happened hadn't fully settled. Or maybe it had settled too perfectly. I had spent so long expecting to be shut out that I didn't know how to react now that the door had been held open. Across from us, the laptop screen had gone black again, but I could still see his face in my mind. My father. Robert. The man who had once turned his back without looking back. The man who had, in the end, left me something far more valuable than money or property. He had left me truth. He had left me peace. Noah finally spoke, his voice no louder than the shifting light. Do you think he meant it? Everything he said. I looked at him. My son. The quiet boy who had carried something heavier than most adults ever would. I reached out and smoothed his hair from his forehead. I think he meant every word. And I did. For all his silence, for all his mistakes, Robert had found a way to speak. Not with anger, not with legacy, but with remorse and clarity and the love he had once refused to give. He had found his voice when it mattered most, even if it was at the end. Noah smiled faintly and leaned his head against my arm. I wrapped my arm around his shoulders and held him close. He had never asked for any of this. He had never wanted to be the one to break the silence, to shift the weight of a fractured family. And yet he had done it without bitterness, without hesitation. I almost didn't come, I said quietly. I thought it would be a waste. I thought we'd just leave with nothing again. But we didn't, he replied, looking up at me. We left with him. That stopped me. Because he was right. We didn't leave with just a signature or a deed or a check in an envelope. We left with a voice. With a connection restored across years of silence. We left with a truth no one in that room could deny or undo. I stood slowly and took one last look around the room. The table, the chairs, the light, all still here, but changed now. No longer symbols of exclusion. Now they felt like pieces of something reclaimed. Noah took my hand again as we walked to the door. I paused with my hand on the handle and glanced back once more, not in regret, but in reverence. And then we stepped outside. The sun was warmer than I expected, or maybe I was just no longer numb. I lifted my face toward the light, eyes closed for a brief moment, letting it wash over me. For years, I had lived in the cold space between what was and what might have been. But today, I had finally crossed into what is. We walked to the car in silence, and it wasn't awkward or heavy. It was complete. I opened the door for Noah, and he climbed in with the easy familiarity of a boy who knew he was safe. I sat behind the wheel, the keys cold in my hand, and took one last breath before turning the ignition. There would be paperwork, conversations, adjustments. I would have to return to this house, maybe many times. But it would never again feel like a place I didn't belong. Because belonging isn't written into a will. It's spoken in forgiveness. It's carved into memory by love. It's earned in silence and healed in truth. And as we drove away, with the afternoon sun chasing us down the road, I held my son's hand once more. Not to hold on out of fear, but simply because we could. Because we had made it through. Because the weight was no longer ours to carry.